Welcome to our session IIS 162, Manage Your Implementation Using SAP Cloud ALM. We are really glad to have you on board, and we will guide you through a wonderful journey of all the capabilities we have in SAP Cloud ALM. So I will do the session together with my dear colleague, Jag Chawla. And we also have on board support. So we have Bhagwati and we have Sinye and also Eva joining in a second. And Bhagwati, Sinye and Eva will support you in the chat. So in case of questions, please just type the questions into the chat, and then our colleagues will take care and will answer the questions as good as possible. So let's get into the session content. The session material is presented via a GitHub page. So if you check the URL and also in the login screen, there was a link to the session material. If you click that, then you will end up here on the GitHub, and there you see all the session material. And you see that we have everything actually here condensed on that single page. So everything is available here, including all the descriptions, and later on also the exercises can be found down here. And we will do the walkthrough together. So our proposal will be that, so Jack will give us some introduction words in a second and tell us a little bit about what is SAP Cloud ALM all about. And then we will get into a getting started section where we try to bring you all into the system. So we have dedicated tenant available here for this TechEd session. And then Jack and I, we will do kind of a role play. So Jack will take the head of the project lead and will guide us through all the tasks that a project lead will do. And I will take the head of a business process expert, more the process type of guy, and will guide you through the exercises that are on that topic. Good. Having said that, I would actually propose that we right away get started, and that maybe Jack, I can hand over to you.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Wulff, and welcome everybody to this session. So let's talk about the product, SAP Cloud ALM. So I think the point is Cloud ALM. So the name of our product also in a way is the essence of our product. So this product is optimized for your cloud implementations, and also it helps you in your entire application lifecycle management and the journey which you need to take from an implementation to even steps beyond implementation, such as maintenance, operations, right? So the idea is when you get this product, then things should work out of the box. And it should be already pre-configured for you, preloaded with the best practice content from SAP with instructions that guide you along this journey. And also our goal is that you have a very seamless experience irrespective of which SAP product you implement. So whether it is SAP S/4HANA Cloud or SAP SuccessFactors. So the idea is all implementations should be consistent, and this is where customers can use same language to talk to partners irrespective of the product that they are implementing. And how we envision is gradually we actually want you not to think about the product, but more the business scenarios, the solution scenarios, and this is what we will explain also in the exercise. When it comes to the core capabilities, then we have two pillars, implementation and operations. So this session is primarily focused on implementation. That means basically build, test, deploy, design, build, test, deploy. These are the key capabilities in the implementation side, but you also need to understand that there is a lot of focus on operations such as monitoring and integration monitoring, user monitoring, and so a lot of other things in the operations area as well. So in this exercise, we'll actually give you a quick preview of all the capabilities, and we actually also expect that you can do them, follow along, because we we will try to go slowly and explain you all the steps. Okay, Wulff, over to you.
Thanks a lot. So then let's get into the hands-on workshop, because this is what that session is. Okay, the first chapter here, so you see that we structured the whole workshop into exercises. Please do the exercises one after the other. So the whole workshop is designed that, for instance, you create a project and then in the following you will then work in the very same project all the time. So you are creating artifacts and those will be reused later again. So there is a given order and you cannot actually pick and choose different exercises, so they would not work. So please do the whole workshop from, let's say, the getting started and then get into exercise 1 and then do one after the other, and then everything will work fine. How can you get into the system? So, and this is first time we click here something on our GitHub page. So let's click on getting started. So here are the instructions how you get into the system. But I want to really make you aware that we are working here in a shared demo environment. So the only thing that separates you from your fellow workshop participants is a session context. Nothing else right now, because we are not in a productive kind of environment. We are actually in a demo environment where we share a single tenant among all the participants of the workshop. So that has some consequences. If you log in and you are all using the same user, if you log in, you have your session context and then you can just work. If you log out again and if you log in again, filters and global context settings set by a fellow workshop participant may change the settings you've made before. So then you have to change back to your settings, and as long you stay in your session context and as long you do not log out, everything will work fine. Will work out fine. So please be aware. So if you logged out and logged in again, just check again, are you working in the right project? Are you working with the right content? And then if you find out that you're not working with the right content, you easily find the right spot to change the project again to the project that belongs to you. Okay, so how can you now log onto the system? So here is a link. Please open SAP TechEd demo tenant landing page. I usually press, I'm a Mac user, the command button. So that opens me a second tab when I click the link here. And here you see that we are now logging on to a dedicated landing page for our TechEd tenant. If you scroll down a little bit on that page, you see that we have here a number of predefined users. In our workshop, we would just work here with Adam because he's administrator, he's kind of super user, he can do everything. So then we don't need to log out and log in again for different purposes. We just have all the capabilities available. The password you can find down here. And that's the link to access the system. So if I click the link, so first I copy here the password, copy. I click on SAP Cloud ALM Launchpad. You see now a tenant pops up. I've done the authentication before. So usually you would get like, so let me do it again. That's better. So I log out again, and then we have the full process visible. So log out. And now do it again, that you see the screen to log in. So now you see the login screen. Here you enter as user then Adam, and the password is the one I just copied and that you found here on our landing page. Here was the password, calm21 #3 is the password. So I just enter that. I log in and I enter the SAP Cloud ALM tenant. You end up here on the Launchpad for SAP Cloud ALM, and you see that we have right now on that Launchpad all the SAP Cloud ALM for implementation capabilities enabled. The capabilities for operations or service are not visible on this tenant because they have not been enabled for you with the user. So once you entered the environment and you see the Launchpad, you have actually performed the first step successfully. You are in the system, and then you can start to work with projects. And that brings me, if I click back, that brings us to the first exercise of our workshop, which is then the project setup. Over to you, Jack.
Okay. So now I'm logged on to the tenant. So I'm using a user trainer. So it has more privileges, but I think that shouldn't matter. This screen we call as Fiori Launchpad, and we will come to this screen multiple times. And during this session, anytime you get lost, you can click on the SAP logo and you will end up in this screen. And here you can see there are different capabilities, and the one which is the focus of this session is implementation. So anything that you need to do will be part of one of these tiles, what we call them. So this is one way in which you can navigate. There is an alternate way, which I'll explain shortly. So the first step that you need to do is start by creation of a project. And there, I'll really request that you stick to some naming conventions. So this is really important, that even will help you find your project, and as Wulff said, the right context, because it's going to be a shared system. And you can see as we are speaking, then people are in the system, they are already creating projects, which is nice. That means, yes, this is exactly what we want you to do. Okay. And so let's start by creation of a project. And here the naming convention we recommend is YYYY. So I'll start with 2021. Then we are in November, and today is 17th, right? And then, so my project name. So here, let's just say IIS 162 main project. Okay. And here, everything is in the context of a project. And as long as you create your own project and you remember which project you created, you will be fine. Okay, because your context will be stored in the context of that project. So by accidentally, if you log out, you can log in again, find your project and resume your work. So that actually simplifies things a lot. Then let's talk about the next step, which is the selection of a template. So as part of this exercise, we'll pick a template, which is SAP Private Cloud Edition, new implementation. So this list is provided by SAP Activate. So we call them roadmaps. Not all roadmaps are available in the Cloud ALM tenant, but this list will be extended over a period of time. But for this session, you can just stick to this template. Then we will save the project and then go ahead with the team setup. As you can see, you can also set the status, you can set the current phase, and you can see currently the project lead is empty, but we will populate that shortly. So now you have your project. Let's go to the time box section. So what is a time box? So time box is a general concept that we have created, which mentions either a phase, a sprint, or a milestone. So you don't have to use all of them, but for this session, we'll actually use sprints heavily, and we'll also create some milestones. So let's do that. So you can leave the dates for the phase blank if you wish, but if you wish, you can enter a date range. So this is something that's, let's say, very quickly. So this project is maybe started in October, right? So the prepare phase is already over. And then right now you are in explore phase. So the explore phase is from 1st November to 27th. November. So you can just mention a couple of phases, and maybe you are a customer who really wants to work with the phases as long as with sprints. So let's start by creation of some sprints. So in this exercise, we'll create 3 sprints, and you can give them any names, but what we have decided are, so sprint 1, sprint 2, and sprint 3. And then you can give some dates. So here it's, so let's say the sprint 1 is from November 15th to 28th, and very quickly I'll create 2 additional sprints. And now let's come to the milestones. So as you can see, system already created these milestones for you. So this is a general concept that you will understand, that Calm actually comes preloaded with a lot of content and methodology to guide you in your journey, so that you don't need to think everything. Even the template that we selected will generate a task list once the project is saved. So that's the whole idea, that you as a customer or a partner don't need to really do a lot of planning and thinking, especially when you move from project to project, customer to customer, or product to product. So you just follow one way to deal with things. And things such as a kickoff date, they're really important because you may have to plan some logistics. Maybe you have to book a meeting room, you want to remember it, and that's why you want to really track a task with a milestone called kickoff. You want to have some kind of a planning on when exactly you want to go live. So this information is really important. So let's do that quickly. Then let's proceed to the team setup. So when you work in the context of a project, you definitely need teams in your project. You can have more than one teams for sure. So as an example, you can have a finance team, a manufacturing team, or you can have, let's say, a country specific team or a partner specific team. For this session, just one team is sufficient. So you don't need to worry about creation of multiple teams, but you need to know that it is possible. A team is displayed only in a display mode within a project. To edit it, I need to go to a specific UI, which is easily found by clicking on Manage Teams. So let's do that. And here, I'm going to change the name of the team to My Team. Okay. And then you can give a description. So we are going to deal with plant Berlin in this exercise. So this team is called Berlin SAP team. And this is really important. So by default, the person who is logged on gets the name as project lead. So when you log on as Adam, then you will see your name something like this. Okay, so I'll even add that. So that's completely fine. So there are 2 project leads, which is also possible. So that's also something that you need to know, that when you have a system, then the administrator needs to do some background work, which we have done already in this tenant, but this is just for information, that if the identity of the user is known to the Cloud ALM system, then the user will be easily entered. And in case not, then you can easily enter an email address, which will trigger subsequent activities. One thing which we have mentioned in the exercise notes, and I'll repeat because it's important, please understand this is a public system. The data that you enter will be visible to others. So please do not enter any personal data such as email address. Okay, project team duplicated with other project teams. So I think somebody is working in my project and is faster than me. So, or maybe the team name has to be unique. So that could be a problem. So I'll choose a different name. So my team trainer. Okay, so I'm able to save my team, and I'm able to get the description. And let's quickly go to the project UI to confirm that the project lead that we entered is visible here. And now I'm all set. So as a project lead, now I'm ready to hand over the baton to my business process expert. So over to you, Wulff.
Thanks a lot, Jack. So I heard there are issues accessing the system right now. So let me quickly share my screen and that I can show you how you can access the environment anyhow. So I think this is the right screen here. Okay, so to the logon page, I added here a direct link to our tenant so that you can right away get started without touching the landing page. So this is the direct link to the environment. So give it a try to access it from there, and then I think it should work out fine for everybody. Otherwise,
can you just put it in the chat? Just so.
What should I put in the chat?
The tenant link.
The direct tenant link? Sure, I can. Yeah. So 1 second. But that's the beauty of a cloud setup, that you can adjust the session material and all these things right away. It's actually pretty cool. So to everyone in the meeting, this is the right link. So I hope everybody gets into the tool now. Anyhow, I will just continue with executing the session script. So I take now the head of a business process expert. So Jag demoed to us how we can access and how we can create a project. And now I want to work with the actual processes. So how would I do that? So if I go now into the launchpad of the tool, you see that we are here now in the launchpad again. So I click on the process authoring tile because it is my assumption that in a real customer project, we can do a lot with the SAP delivered best practice standard content. So I hope for all the commodities, you can just leverage the processes that are provided by SAP. But I guess there are still cases where people have to model their own custom practices. And we want to give people an opportunity to add those own custom processes also to the implementation projects and to facilitate the implementation of these processes with SAP Cloud ALM as well. So I click here on process authoring. I check that I'm in the right environment. So I have here custom solution processes, and I can now start to define my custom processes. So that's pretty easy. I just hit here the create button, and now I can add here my custom solution process. So I give it a name. So let's say we have here the month and we have the 17th. And then I give it a name. This is my IIS 162 order to cash implementation. So this is a concrete implementation of a business process. And what we've done here in Cloud ALM, we organize all the processes around the implementation version of a process. And I guess everybody can easily imagine that order to cash is something, quite generic. What is order to cash? Order to cash in different plans, in different business units, in different countries might look slightly different. And sometimes if people also execute these order to cash processes in dedicated systems, for instance, for a dedicated plant, then it's following a completely different implementation. But still you want to trace that back to the original, that this is an implementation of order to cash. And that's why you can reference here a business process variant, and you can express with that our current 117 my IIS 162 order to cash implementation is a implementation of order to cash. I click save. And now actually we created our process. So the process editor and the details view opens up. Here we go. And the diagram editor is ready to define our process. Now we have two kinds of diagrams available here. We have on one hand side the so-called solution value flow, and here slightly grayed out because we are in edit of the solution value flow right now. We have solution process flow diagrams. What is the difference between the two? Solution value flows are a little bit more abstract. This is like, yeah, the summary version of what the process can do for you. So here we try to depict and to outline the business scope of the process that we are modeling. So we are doing here order to cash, and now let's describe here what capabilities of order to cash we expect. So for instance, we will do a order entry processing. Yeah, that's one thing. What does order entry processing means? Well, so we manage incoming orders. So let's add a business activity for that. You see a bunch of business activities are already available. And here I just pick from an existing one, and I can now add that here to my diagram canvas. I can continue. Let's say our order to cash also has a capability to manage credit. So we have credit management here. So let's add the credit management, and again we can now define here what in particular we mean. So we have a business activity here that is about check the credit limit for a customer. So we can add that as well, and now we can here nicely describe the scope of the process. For your exercise, you don't need to model exactly the very same process I have here. So if you believe that you want to do something different or you have a different process to model, feel free to do it. So it should be a little bit comparable, but you can be very free here. So, and let's say we have here also the finance portion, and then we can right away make that a little bit bigger here. I add here some more activities. So let's add the billing. We have to send out the bills. Let's do the accounts receivable here. Let's see, is it available? There it is. But I could even add my own thing here. Yeah. So let's add here one more business activity. My dunning, for instance. So I can also create new ones. I just hit the plus button here, and then I created here a new business activity. And this is the way how we actually just describe the scope of the process. So if you enter the process and if you discuss the process with business people, you can tell them, look, we have here order to cash implementation, and it covers incoming orders, credit check limit, billing, accounts receivable, and my dunning. It's a nice overview on the process. But this is not the exact flow how the process is supposed to be executed. Yeah, this is then more like a flow chart we require. And this is the second step we will do now. So I hit the save button. Now I save that diagram. And now I can move over here to the solution process flow. I get into the solution process flow. I hit the edit button. And now you see here on the left that we already have a palette available. And that's a modeling palette that can be used to now define BPMN diagram. BPMN stands for Business Process Modeling and Notation. So it gives you a kind of a lingua franca that everybody could understand who models BPMN, that depicts for you the supposed process flow. So if different people model BPMN diagrams using the same notation, we have a pretty high chance that we would understand the same model the same way. So and that's the beauty of BPMN. And now here you can start to model your BPMN diagram. In BPMN, you can here pick, for instance, from the palette pools. Pools usually represent participants of a process. And here we could say, so, well, this is the highest level participant. This is the order to cash in our plant Berlin, for instance. Yeah, let's put it like this. And here different participants, different people, for instance, are involved. So we have a sales rep who does some work, and we can add more lanes here. So let's add a second lane. So here we have a warehouse clerk. And now I can again start to add here the different modeling symbols to the diagram. So we have a start event here. We can name the start event. This is the start event for our internal order to cash process. Is actually something like customer order arrived. That's the event we have here. And now we can again start to model. Let's say we have here, first step is create sales order. You have here again a popover that allows you to pick from existing solution activities, but you can also create new ones. So I just take here the create sales order. I add that to the right spot on my canvas. I do the wiring, and now I have started to model my BPMN process. From here, I can say, okay, let's say next step is then, I don't know, what was it? The available to promise calculation. Let's add that here. Then we will have the creation of the delivery for the warehouse activities. So, and this is how you do the BPMN modeling. It's simply drag and drop of activities onto the canvas and then wiring them. Yeah, and if you want to finish the process, you can also then add your end event. So you see that here in the diagram we have on the workshop material, I did a little bit more. I also used a second pool. I used a data object to explain that the available to promise calculation, for instance, users input the line items, the sales order line items. We have here another lane for the creation of the billing document. This is really something you can freely do and where you can define how your practices look like. And this is the detailed process flow in comparison to the more abstract business summary that we had on the first diagram. So now I can click save, and then I save also this diagram. And now we have the two perspectives ready of our order to cash implementation process, the solution value flow and the solution process flow. But within Cloud ALM so far, nobody can see the process, because the process that we defined so far is here in a draft status. And draft means it's hidden. It's not visible to other people. It cannot be pulled into the scope of an implementation project. It was just defined so that you can make your mind how the process execution is supposed to work. If we want to make that process available to the other Cloud ALM capabilities, if we want to use it in an implementation project, if we want to use it for test case generation, if we want to attach requirements to the process flow, then in the first place, we need to activate the process. And that you can just do by hitting here the activate button. And if you hit the activate button, carefully also review here the draft status and see what happens there. So I hit activate. Do you want to activate the solution process? Yes, I want. And now you see that the status changed from draft into active, meaning from now on, this process is available for project activities and can be used to define the project scope. And this is where I would also then continue with our exercise. So because that the activation was actually the last step of exercise 2, document custom processes. We scroll down a little bit, you see we've performed all these activities here. We changed at the end with the activate from draft to active, and then the next exercise will be then exercise 3, define the project process scope. Let's get there. defining the project process scope is really about setting the baseline for our project. So if you want to do a implementation project, and if you define a project as this is the delivery of a defined scope under time constraints, and all the time boxing was defined by Jag already, but we don't know what we need to implement in the project. That's the portion we need to add, and this is what's coming up next year, because now we will define the process scope. We will pick and choose all the processes that we want to implement in our implementation project. So let me show you that in the system. I click here on the SAP logo. I get back with that to our initial launchpad. And now I click here on processes. With clicking on processes, I actually start the solution process scope application that we have available. So now I have to check that I'm working in the right project. So Jag, what was the name of the project you created? Let's take here the KLM demo project. I hope that's the right one. I don't know exactly. Let's get into this one here. It's empty, that looks good. So hopefully I'm lucky here. So you see that we are here in the project. And that's actually also the activity you have to perform if you logged out and logged in again. You have to check you are working in the right project, and that's the right selector to do so. So we are now here in our implementation project. And now I would start an entity that we call a scope. So this is here, you see there is the Manage Scope button. I click on Manage Scope. What is a scope? Yeah, actually a scope is a bracket that bundles processes that belong together. So for instance, if you are operating certain processes in a particular plant or in a particular business unit, or if you have processes that are managed together because they are running in the same tenant and they have to be upgraded together, then you would bundle them into a scope. And this is also how we should do the naming of a scope. It should tell you a little bit about the purpose of the processes that you find within the scope. So here I will name my my scope.
Wulff, so, sorry to interrupt, but I think you need to choose the right project.
I asked for the project and I was asking, so what is the right one?
That's the fourth one, so IIS 162 main project.
Thank you, Jag.
Yeah. So this is a deliberate act. We want to tell you that it's so easy to get confused. So please ensure you choose the right project.
Right. Super. Plant Berlin is the scope we define now. Thanks, Jag. And Plant Berlin, this is like, yeah, you have a plant in Berlin, and let's assume that that plant operates own system landscape or own tenants. And now, so you could say, okay, the processes that we run in the Plant Berlin, they are all on the same tenant, so we manage them together. So it also makes sense from an implementation perspective to treat them together, because they are always upgraded together. So you cannot just upgrade a single process in the same tenant. So if you upgrade a tenant, then you actually touch all the processes that are configured in that tenant. So here we bundle them. So we click on Save and we create our tenant. We create our scope. You see that here, so it already shows up in the right filter. The scope filter already shows you the Plant Berlin, and now we can go for edit. So I click on Edit Scope, and now you see that the system thinks a little bit, because now suddenly all the processes that are available for scoping are popping up here. And right now, here on that screen, you see that we have approximately 10,000 processes available. That's a lot. That's a mouthful. So now we actually should try to reduce the list a little bit to make it a little bit more handy. So let's say we are in Plant Berlin. So this is obviously in Germany. So we first filter by Germany. So we are looking for German country versions. That's the first thing I would do. So now you see that we reduced the number to 533. Second, I would say I only want to see here best practice processes. So that doesn't change a lot here, but I know, because I'm with SAP for a while, I know these famous scope item IDs. Yeah, and I guess many of you know the scope item IDs. They are still relevant and they are still good to find and search solution processes, and we will do exactly the same here. So there is, for instance, the BKP process. We can search for it, and then you find right on the screen here the scope switch, and I can just pull it into the scope of the implementation project. It's that easy. So you could even search here for the BD9 and for all the other scope items that we have available. But for sure, you can also search any other search term here. So if we search for sales, you will see that here we get now a pretty big number of results. 44 contain the word sales. We will also add additional content here. So right now you could see that was here custom process. We have the SAP Intelligent Enterprise Suite processes available. We have the custom process available, but we will also add here in the near future the best practice 2111 content. We are working on making success factors content available. We are working to making the Ariba content available. We are working to making the S4 on-premise content available. So lots of content to come in the near future. And we believe that this is really a very solid foundation for many, many implementation projects. Okay, so I scoped so far one process, so that was the BKP. What else can we do? Well, so we just created our own implementation, our own solution process. We modeled our own process, right? So let's add that one. So I will clear here the country region filter. So I will not need that one anymore. And I will here for solution scenario, I will switch to custom. And if I do so, you see that the list refreshes and that we actually have now a number of processes available. And here you see that they are grouped by the business process variant. You see that here lots of people already created some processes here. And obviously one of them is mine, I guess. Yeah, let's see which one it is. It is the My IIS 162 order to cash implementation. But there are many other implementations of order to cash already available in this system. And that are all the processes that have been created by workshop participants. And one colleague already also created his own business process variant, which is about a nice pizza delivery, I guess. Okay, so let's take our process. So I can take our standard process here and I can again just put it in scope. So I just click the scope switch. And I guess for our little implementation project here, we are good with the two processes we scoped. And I can hit the end scoping. I can remove the filter here. And now we see that the content is available. I could navigate here into the accelerated customer returns and review the processes that we have there and the content. But I could do exactly the same here with the custom process we just defined a couple of minutes ago. So if we now navigate into that one here, you see that was the solution value flow we designed. If I click on the process flow, you see that we have here now also the BPMN diagram available that we designed before. And this is then also starting point for the next step. which is then, to complete the project scope. So far we defined the project process scope. So we know what processes we plan to implement in our implementation project, but we don't know exactly the full scope because we don't know the requirements that come up. And you know that the project effort is usually very much driven by the requirements because, well, so if people just tell you, okay, so we've seen that application, but this is not really how we do things around here. Can you please add an additional field, or if you can, please add an additional column to an existing table, or can you please add in the configuration a new unit of measurements? That are all requirements that you should collect, and only the requirements together with the processes build the actual process scope. And now we have to work on the process scope, and you see that also in the session script, because we've done the definition of the project process scope. We've done all the steps that are mentioned here. And if I scroll down a bit, you see that the next exercise, the exercise 4, after we defined the process project scope, is about determining the project implementation scope. And this is where we work now on the requirements. And this is where we do these very famous fit to standard workshops, because fit to standard is one of the key concepts we have to follow in cloud implementation projects, because we believe that with SAP we have a high number of very valuable practices, and now we should find out to what extent do we need in the project to change the existing practices that SAP delivered already. How can we now support you in working with fit to standard workshops? Let me show you that again in the system. So we've seen the content here, and I would now just navigate back here to our overview page, to our launchpad. The first thing I want to show you are the standard tasks that we have available. So let's go into the task list. Here we have all the tasks. So you remember, as we created the project, that there was a roadmap selected. And that actually led to the situation that we generated a number of tasks into the project. And that's actually the work breakdown structure, that are the project tasks we recommend you to perform in order to execute a successful implementation project with SAP Cloud ALM. And here you find all the tasks that have been added to our project and that you should work on in course of executing the project. Now here I will do some selection. I will first pick here our plant Berlin. So you remember that in the previous step we created a scope, so we will use that scope here. And as this is a independent entity, so and that where we have processes available, and let's say I work here as the business process expert, so not assignee, I have to go for the role, so I go for the business process expert. You see that we have now here 3 tasks available, and those have been generated for our plant Berlin, because we suggest you to schedule fit to standard workshops for the plant Berlin scope. So we would ask you to invite the right business people and the right people who can discuss the processes with you from the plant Berlin into a meeting where you can now go into the details. So for that, we scheduled the fit to standard workshop that would obviously happen in Outlook or in any other collaboration tool. And then in the workshop, you would work here on the task on conduct fit to standard workshop, right? And if you want to know what is conduct fit to standard all about, you can just click on the task. You would get some additional explanations, what is the procedure you are supposed to follow. We would tell you that you are supposed to run a show and tell session, so you should log on to the SAP system. So if you are implementing S4, you should log on to the S4 system. You should demo your colleagues the processes and the UIs and how they look like, and then you should discuss and capture requirements they have. And this is here about capture requirements and capture the nodes. For what processes? So yeah, well, we defined the processes already when we defined the scope. And you see that here is a little navigation icon. So I click on that navigation item, and then you see that we navigate from the task list into the solution process scope application that presents us the processes that are in scope for the planned burden. So this is the kind of forward navigation we always want to have here in SAP Cloud ALM. So we are really working on linking the different applications that are provided here to really provide you a nice user flow. So let's have a deeper look into the accelerated customer return. So I click on that process because now I assume that I'm sitting here in a fit to standard workshop and I have my business counterparts with me. We discuss the process, we open on a second screen the business application, we execute the UIs, the theories that are behind different activities, and we discuss how whole process works. So we get here into the solution process flow, for instance. So let me click solution process flow. And now you see that we have here a flowchart, a BPMN diagram available that depicts how the accelerated customer returns works. And now here we can, for instance, use that navigator control here to navigate into the diagram. We can now here also move the screen a little bit, and we can also search for the different activities. We can click on the different elements that are available. And you see, if I click on an element that we see on the right here, a little call out button. And if I click that call out button, the system allows me to create requirements and nodes. So what is now the difference between a requirement and a node? Well, a requirement is something actionable. This is something where you say, okay, the determine refund, this is a good thing, and we've seen how it works in the application, but still we need to adjust the behavior of that process step, of that solution activity. And this is a change need. So you would create requirements if you want to have something adjusted or developed. Yeah. A node is more an information. This is where you capture additional knowledge that you have. So for instance, what good example do I have? There are certain reports that are available in S/4HANA on-premise, but that you cannot call in S/4HANA Cloud. But the same functionality is delivered by a new UI or by a different Fiori that allows you to perform a certain setting, or you cannot change it at all in the cloud environment. And if you know that, and if you want to remember that, then you would create a node, because then you can capture that additional knowledge, and then you know, okay, that was that setting, and I in S4 it worked a little bit different, and now here in cloud it is a new UI, and you just capture that additional knowledge. This is nothing where somebody has to develop something, but it's good to know. So you capture a node. For us here, as we are about determining the project implementation scope, we have to do something actionable, because here is a adjustment we want to do, or in configuration we want to do on the determine refund activity. So I click here on create requirement. And if I click on create requirement, I get into the UI that allows me to define new requirements. So this is how it looks like. It was about determine refund. And let's say we are a pretty cool company here and we want to have a very nice and friendly refund policy implemented. So we would just take here the text and we will define our requirement. Yeah. Let's say this is here friendly refund policy. What is that about? Yeah. Be nice to our customers. Yeah. Please change config to perform different, to behave different. You define here your change need, right? So, and you have here a text editor that allows you to capture insights about that, and here you can specify what is the essence of the requirement that you created. If we scroll down a little bit, then you see that we can do even more settings here. So for instance, there's a work stream definition. Work stream is very important because there you can make clear what kind of adjustment do we have here. Is it like application design and configuration? So if it's very configuration centric, so I would go for this work stream here. If I had an interface that we need to implement, or if we had a data exchange with an external application, I would go into the workstream integration, because this is also important for the people working in the project, because people have different knowledge, and then you have the people that work on the configuration, you have the people that work on integration, you have the standard PMO folks, you have the people that are more on the testing arena. So you can now bring it into the right work stream. So we are here in application design and configuration. There was a team defined earlier, so my team trainer. So I picked that one here because there we have the right people working with us. And then I can just save the requirement because it's, for the moment, is sufficiently specified, I would say. So we go back here, and now in our workshop, you see that here under requirements, already the friendly refund policy shows up. And now we can always keep track on where is the process defined and what was done there. And if we now scroll in again to the solution activity that we had. So what was it? It was something about determine, right? Determine refund. So I can also use the search to get to the right spot a little bit faster. So I click it here, now we are. So I found it very quick. You see that the activity is already marked, and you see under requirements that our newly created requirement shows up. That's good. Okay, so let's check here also for the status of the process. You see that the process is right now in design. Well, so I guess I assume that we get that requirement here confirmed, and I will be a little bit fast, and I already set my process to status realization, because now I assume that we started to work on the process. Now we take it really serious with the process, and I want to keep track on what are the processes I already worked on. So those I put into realization. What are the processes that I still change from a flow perspective? Those I would keep in design. And you see here also the other status. For instance, you can see which ones are already in productive use, or what is maintenance, which one are in productive use, but we need to change them, so they go into maintenance, or what processes were in production once, but are not used anymore, but still configured. Those would go into obsolete. And this is the way how we can also describe the flow of the process status and the process lifecycle. Having said that, next step would be to work a little bit more with the requirements we have. And that's already the next step, I guess. So this was exercise 4, exercise 4, determine the project implementation scope. We've done all that work already. So if I scroll down a little bit, and then the next step would be manage requirements realization. And I think, Jack, that's again something for you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do that. So what I have done is I'm in the requirement screen, but I'll proceed slowly because if you are in the process screen, then please click on the launchpad. Then you are expected to come to this. Then you can click on this style requirements and you will end up in the requirement screen. Okay. Now, before proceeding further, please ensure you are in the right project. So here it becomes interesting. So what, it's getting crowded. So this also indicates it's a real session and people are all excited and following along. Nothing could be better, but then it also makes the job to find your project every time a bit hard. Okay. So something which we have not included in the exercise, but what you can do is after you select your project and then even your scope if you want. I mean, there is just one scope, so you can select it. Then you can click here and you can save this as a view. And view is user specific. So that means at least for your session or something, I mean, you'll be able to find it relatively quickly. This is just one tip that at least I found helpful. But again, please ensure you are working in your own project. Otherwise, you will not be able to get to overview. You will not see what is happening and it will be difficult for you. Okay, but in this case, now I have to switch my hat. So I'm not just the project lead, but I also have a charter for my requirements. I want to see what has happened. Is this sufficient for the development to proceed or should it be detailed further? That is the focus of this exercise. So this is a requirement list and I can go and click and go into the requirement details, right? So I have some text that be nice to customers and please change config to so and so, but yes, so this is something which is definitely not ready for development yet, which is also indicated by the status in specification. So the idea is when things are handed over, you make your best effort to collect the information as part of it to standard workshop, but then you really have to detail it out. And when we say detailing it out, we mean things that you create below a requirement as a hierarchy. So that is a user story or a project task. Functionally, these two transactions are very similar, so you can really pick anyone. We recommend you use project tasks for clarifications, alignments, more or less the orchestration of the whole thing. And you keep user stories which are specific to the business use case. So in this exercise, we'll create a user story. And what is this user story? So I want to detail it out to at least one level deep on what I want this requirement to be, right? So I'll give a nice title. So I, as a customer, want to get my transparency on deductions, right? Then for my development, I want to enter some more instructions. So something like, please ensure the rules are transparent, and then there is a nice UI to capture the rules. And this is a rich text editor, so you can add screenshots. So that's the whole idea. So it should be very specific. And also you will shortly see when we save this user story, this is saved as a child of requirement. So this is also the first step towards traceability. So we started with the process. Even before we started with a scope had a process had a requirement, now requirement has a user story. And the advantage of using SAP Cloud ALM is you keep things together. And this is what we'll also see in the last part when we go to reporting. But let's make small steps. So I can save the user story right now, or I can add additional attributes. So if you notice from an experience perspective, all of them are anchors. So these anchors basically help you to scroll to the right area quickly. Okay. So in this case, I have to enter the right sprint. Okay, and this step is very important, because otherwise you will not get to the overview page and you will not see your user story when you select your filters. So I have my planning done, and I want this user story to be done in sprint 1. Okay, so I make the selection, and then in this exercise we also advise that you add some other attributes such as story points. So story points it comes from agile methodology, that rather than having a very precise estimation on number of hours, number of days, you just estimate by relative sizing, and that's much faster. And then if you are using sprints, then obviously you need to know what is your current velocity. And when you assign story points, then you say, historically, I do 54 story points in my sprint. And if this one is 5 story points, this means I have room for more work. That is what we recommend you to think. You don't have to do it. So you don't really have to use story points. So Calm is designed to be a very flexible tool. If you think this is not how you work, you can ignore this field, but this is something that at least we find very valuable from other customers. Then the second important thing is the team. So here, in this example, we have just created one team, but in real life projects, for sure, you'll have different teams. There can be an architectural team, there can be a UI team, and then you really want to make sure that the user story is routed to the right team quickly so that people can start working on that. So for now, we'll just add to the only team that exists, and then we will save. So now I created my user story, and here this is really important, relations. So I know this user story is related to something. Okay, what is this something? So this is a parent, which is a requirement. And that's a friendly refund policy that Wulff created as part of Fit to Standard workshops. I can click on this and navigate to the requirement so that I can find that easily. So let's do that. And I get back to my requirement, right? And these are the attributes such as work streams, everything that was added by Wulff. Now let's understand how approval works. So I can click on this approve and basically indicate that this requirement is blessed by the PMO office. We have budget for it. It's good to proceed, things like that. But how it works is you don't really need approval. This is an optional step. So this is also coming from customer feedback that sometimes approvals are not required. So you can change the status even without approval. So it depends on your use case in your organization. Do you need approvals? Do you not need them? Maybe you have different requirements of different scale, complexity, and size. Sometimes you will need approval. And this is the example in this exercise. That means the understanding is first, the approval should happen, and only then the development will start. This is a more traditional approach, which is actually even more common with customers. This also ensures, full accountability and that due diligence is done before work is started. So notice very carefully here, I don't see any special label. Let me go ahead and approve it. And now I see this sticky label, and I also see this here in my list. So this is very simple, that when you go through a list which has many requirements, you can easily filter on what are the requirements which are approved and what are the requirements which are waiting for approval. Okay, and then the last step in this exercise is an indication that now things have proceeded for this requirement. It is no longer in specification. We have enough information to proceed. We have our first user story. We have even detailed out our first user story. Then in realization is the right status for this requirement. Okay, and now I have to get back to my business process expert, and then he can create the test case for this. Over to you, Wulff.
So we are back in Cloud ALM. So Jag actually did the whole requirements realization. So we worked through all the steps that are mentioned here in exercise 5. And what's coming next is then exercise 6, manage test cases. Good. So manage test cases. So I guess so. I personally have always the feeling that people are not really in love with test cases, but actually it is something really important, because just to believe that the processes are doing what you try to configure and to know it, this is a big difference. And I believe it is always a good thing to have a proper test management in place to make sure you are really delivering the right functionality. And I could always also say, so maybe that keeps you out of jail. So it's always good to have a proper test management. So let's get into test preparation first, because the first thing I want to do is, now I want to implement, I want to create a test case, because Jag created the user story. He very precisely specified what the people should configure in the system, but now we need to double check, is the system really doing what we try to configure, and that we can best test with a test case. So we just click here on the test preparation, the create button. So now we get here a little side panel, and what we want to test now is we want to test the changed behavior on the deduction policy that we worked on earlier, and where we calculated the refund for a customer return. So this is here now, accelerated customer returns, and it is about the deduction policy. So let me add that quickly here. So there we go. The project is the right one. We worked in a certain scope. Let's check what we find here. There is the plant Berlin, and there was one solution process that we used. So we created our requirement here on the accelerated customer returns. Let's pick this one here. The process comes with a number of diagrams. We used here the O1 diagram. Yeah, that's the good baseline. So we want to create now a test case skeleton using the data we find here in the solution process flow for the accelerated customer returns management. That's the starting point for us. So I click save. Now the system retrieves all the data that we have available for our solution process that we specified as part of the project scope. And now you see that the system finds here a number of activities. You see here display returns overview, post goods received, generate subsequent delivery free of charge order, create outbound delivery, and so on and so forth. That are all the activities, that are all the steps that you had before on the BPMN diagram. These steps are now used to build here, or are offered to build a skeleton, a foundation for our test case. Actually, we could now pick them all here and create our own test case. In principle, you know that test cases are also available. So in case of S4, for instance, there's automated test cases. SAP Cloud ALM also allows you to retrieve the status for these automated test cases and to find out whether those were executed successfully or not. But here in this particular case, I want to create a dedicated manual test case that I also will test manually, because there's a very special change I do on the data mine refund process step that maybe also included some developments and some integration with external tools, something like that, something I can hardly test in an automated test case. So that's why I create now a manual test case, and I click save, because I picked here my data mine refund step. That's the step I want to test. And now I have here a chance to define the different activities people do when they run the data mine refund. So for instance, if they do the data mine refund, the first step they do is, they have to find the customer. No? find customer is like the first action they perform when they perform the determined refined activity. So, and here find customer, what is the user about to do? Here enter customer number and press OK, for instance. Yeah. If he does that, what is the result that we expect? Well, yeah, the customer is displayed on the screen. Yeah. So you would now describe the actions that people perform and the results that you expect when they performed these actions. So I can just add here, okay. Now you see that we have here for that solution activity one step, but we can have multiple steps here. So for instance, if you have many entry fields, then you can actually define here very much in detail what data to add, what fields to fill, what fields not to fill, what buttons to hit, and so on and so forth. And here we would say now the second activity after we found our customer is that we have to calculate the refund. And there we could say, well, this is now select the order and press calculate refund. Yeah. So you would just describe here again what the user should do. Calculate refund. What is the result? Refund value displayed. Right. Maybe you can also define here further attributes, what exact should be shown. You can add here, for instance, also values, numbers, whatever you find appropriate to describe the expected result. So we click OK, and now we see if we want to test now this process step here, then we have in the test case to perform those two solution actions. And we know exactly what we have to do and what the expected result is. What we also do is we mark now this test case as ready. Let's say this is already good enough. So we want to make it available for test execution. So I set status to test case prepared. And now I just hit the save button. And our test case is ready. Right? Good. Next step after the test preparation is actually to also then execute these kind of tests. Yeah, preparing is nice, but running the tests is then bringing the truth. So we go again here to the launchpad of our application. And here you see that we have, beside test preparation, also a test execution tile available. So we hit the test execution tile. Let's get in. And here it is really straightforward. So you see that we are in our project, we are in our plant Berlin. This is the test case we just prepared. Nobody tested that test case before. So let's do this. We hit execute, and now the whole thing starts. So we now can manually test. I would now follow the instructions that I see on my screen. I would open my application. I would open the determined refund application. I would enter the first customer number. I would hit OK, and then I would see, well, data for my customer displayed. Nice. Then I have a choice. Then I can say, okay, do I see my customer? Then it's pass. Do I have some reservations? Then I would pass with conditions. Or if I have really problems or the step didn't work, then we actually can also set it to fail. So here it was all well defined. So I just set it to pass. I go to the next step, calculate refund. I now hit the button for calculating the refund. I see a nice and clean value. Good. So I can again set it to pass. And with that, I would say, wow, that was fast. I done my manual test case, so I saved the result. Well, I can also close the test run, and I see that we are actually good to go, and then we can now talk about deploying the functions into the actual managed systems and moving the deployment throughout the landscapes. And this is where I think Jag will now show you the deployment management.
Yes. So thanks, Wulff. So now the thing is, the story continues. So the story started with, again, activity being coming from the business. User story was broken down, everything was fine. A test case was created and set to passed, right? Now we are finally ready for deployment. So how do you enable deployment is via this capability called features. And let's talk about that a little bit. I'll also, in a way, remind you that there are two ways to navigate. One is by coming to the launchpad always, click on the tile, and the other option is this side panel in which we have the same icon available. So you can actually jump across capabilities using this left panel navigation also, completely up to you. So what is a feature? So feature is, you can say, a record of change. That means it's something that you want to ensure is documented and also delivered along with that, right? So a feature can be a larger unit which contains smaller units such as user stories and tasks. So you basically have multiple things. Maybe they have the same transport, but different user story. So a typical example could be, yes, there was a development done and a customizing done, but they should be going together to production, right? So you want to take care of sequences, you want to make sure things are done from a testing perspective together. And this is where this larger bracket feature comes. And this feature has definitely a very heavy connotation for deployments and transport handling. And we'll see shortly that you can assign transports from a system that is connected. So in this case, we started with a S/4HANA private cloud edition. So this tenant is connected to a private cloud edition, and we'll shortly see that we can even create a feature and assign a transport to that. So let's do it. So I start with this dialog in which I have to enter some parameters. So my title is determine refund for configuration and developments. So okay, then scope, we have one scope, so that's good. There is no confusion. Plant Berlin. Then you can pick the application workstream as design and configuration. And this workstream way of working is also pretty common with customers. And we'll see shortly in the overview page, we have a card which says distribution of things by workstreams. And that also keeps things in a very consistent state, right? Then in this case, it's a high priority when business really wants it very, very quickly, right? And then we enter some description so that it's good for the documentation, as well as the stakeholders should feel absolutely relaxed that, you know, what is being deployed as part of this feature. So that nobody really needs to go into the level of the transports to understand quickly, especially if you're a approver or a senior manager, then you really want to quickly understand what is happening, and then the details are taken care by the other team members. Okay, then let's proceed. So I'll save the feature. Okay, and you see currently the feature is in specification. Now, that means I have created a container and I'm ready to proceed, but I don't have the actual transport assigned yet. So first I should do is I should click on start implementation. So to indicate that I have now again, you know, moved to the subsequent stage. So it's no longer in specification, but now I really want to do the first steps of my deployment. So what will be those first steps? It will be assignment of a transport. And here, if you are following along, then please listen very carefully to the instructions, because here we have a potential that you can really cause some disruptions and unnecessary headache to other fellow participants. So let's be respectful. Please, please, please only pick one of these transports and assign it to your feature. Because once you pick the transport, it's consumed and nobody else can make use of it. And since we are all working in parallel, it's quite likely that you pick a transport, but you have spent too much time on that screen and somebody else has selected the same one. So when you try to save, you get an error. Okay. And if that happens, then do not fret, just pick another transport, but please pick only one so that there are enough transports left for other participants. Okay. So the story continues. As a deployment manager, now I know exactly what is happening. Okay, in this case, for simplicity reasons, I have not attached a user story, but so you can also actually have a user story creation from a feature. So this is also something that is, as a customer, you may have a different way of working style in which you say, okay, I know already my features and I know which user stories are going to go in them, and then you do that association. Yeah, but let's keep things simple for now. In this demo, we have a feature, we have assigned a transport, and now what next? So the next step is deployment. So this means, so SAP Cloud ALM is not just a tool for documentation and viewing or dealing with records, but we can also do actual technical changes from system A to system B. Okay, we'll expand these capabilities over a period of time, but right now we offer this support for SAP S/4HANA Cloud Private Cloud Edition. That means you can connect this system to S/4HANA Cloud ALM tenant, and then SAP Cloud ALM tenant can actually move transports in your productive landscape for Private Cloud Edition. This, I think, is significant. And once you understand, then you will also appreciate that over a period of time, our vision is we will extend these capabilities to other products as well. Okay, it will be done in small increments, the capabilities will be enhanced, but that's the whole idea in which the full traceability comes into view. So you start with the requirement, and if the smallest unit is transport, then you can really track the status end to end on where things are, if there are any errors along the way, right? So in this case, let's go ahead and click the deploy button. So, okay, are you sure? Do you want to deploy the transport? And you can see that here, the system has already calculated the destination because we have not showed all the steps, but SAP Cloud ALM knows your landscape. It knows the origin of this transport request. It knows the transport route, so it can calculate the destination. So all those things are already thought through. As an average user, you don't need to worry about all these details. Okay, the system will take care. Okay. So let's go ahead, and now it says deployment scheduled in S/4HANA 802. So it may take some time because now some batch jobs will run, and then we have to keep refreshing the status. So we can also come back to this after some time. I mean, so the idea is that the system has a transport request, you assign it, you deploy it, you get your target system, and eventually the transport even moves to that system, and then the status is captured in this feature. Okay, while I'm waiting, I'll say approve for deployment. Okay, in the interest of time, I'll say let's not wait for the status of this transport. This is just supposed to happen. And then the last step is you actually even set the status that the deployment has happened. Ideally, you do it after you see the status, but again, I want to leave some room for question and answer, so I'll proceed. So I'll say confirm deployment, and then the feature shows the status deployed. What is really important is this history. And this is also a feature which is not just in this, but for requirements, for projects, everywhere you see a very detailed history on what is being done by whom and at what time. And this ensures full traceability so that people know that the system will log the actions. So that way we can have minimal restrictions, more or less a trust-based environment, but still with this detailed history, then it is already ready for audit and compliance. Okay. Let me try one more time. Okay. Okay, so it's deployed, right? So it was well worth the wait and it's in consistent state. Now I'll go to exercise 8, which is project overview and traceability. Okay, so on here we have two icons or two tiles, I should say. One is this overview and the one is analytics. So what is the purpose of these? We'll see shortly, but before even we click, this is a high level picture of a project which is on a day basis. What is today? Everything is focused on today. So this is for an instant, right? Whereas the analytics is mainly even for historical data, trends, and more complex analysis, right? That's how fundamentally how these are structured. So let's go into the overview first and see what are the capabilities, what are the different visualizations I see, and how as a project lead, because that's my role as a persona today, then I find information valuable. So the first thing, again, a request, please make sure you are in the right project. And with that, so let's see. So within this short time, we did a lot of work. So really, as this all is part of this session, this is what we did from the beginning. These tasks were generated when we selected the template. Then there are some tasks which are assigned to the roles. And then you can see that there is a distribution by work stream, which comes from the Activate methodology. We have our plant Berlin, in which we have 2 processes in scope. Then we have another scope. And there is one requirement for this. So immediately it gives me tremendous value. And also I see, okay, 131 tasks are overdue. So somebody is not doing his or her job. So let me go and see what is happening. Or maybe there are some constraints, technical constraints, or whatever could be the reason. So now the first objective I have to quickly find my user story that I created. So I'll actually adjust the filters. So this is very important that there are some hidden options which are available for you. We don't want to overwhelm you, okay? And maybe quickly, I can also say that if in projects you find these cards overwhelming, you can even go to this manage cards and you can disable some of them. So this is just so that we keep things simple. So as a persona, you really fine tune. So as an example, if Wulff would have created this view, then maybe he would have removed this project status by task completion and maybe put the requirements stop and the solution processes at the right beginning. So you can really do these things because you have this flexibility. In this case, I'll just go ahead and pick the adapt filters because I'm interested in my time box, which is the sprint. So there is a sprint 1, which is really upcoming. I want to make sure I'm ready for that. I want to make sure that things are in the right state. Okay. So as I expected, I just see one user story, and that's what I reminded that if you assign the user story to the right sprint and you filter for that sprint, things will be consistent for you. So now that means this user story is open, okay? And I immediately say, oh, but I already did it. Maybe I forgot to update the status, right? And that's also a huge advantage of overview, that it is not just a view environment. It has subsequent navigation capabilities. You can click off any of these tile headers to quickly go to the tile. And you can also click on many of these elements to get to the precise element in which you want to navigate. So let me quickly go to this user story. And it was showing as open. I'll go and set it to done, which you can do easily by clicking the status here. Right? And then I go back to the overview page. Okay, I should have saved my view. This is also something good that maybe good time to show. So If you make some selections, then you have to save them as a view so that system remembers them. So I do it one more time. So I have the sprint one selected, right? And now the open user story disappeared because it's no longer upcoming. And that's exactly what I was expecting. And you see this asterisk, that means now this is not the standard view, but a modified one. So I'll go ahead and save it. And I'll say IIS 162 view with sprint one. Okay. And I'll say, okay, so I can even set it as default. So then after this, let's go to the analytics applications. So you have two ways to navigate. From the overview, you can just click on this card, that's fine. Or you can click on this left panel navigation and go to the analytics applications. So this is also coming from customer feedback that we really understood that sometimes you really want the historical data. You want to see trends so that you can do course corrections. You can also find systematic behavior, and that helps you in analysis. Also, in cases such as process traceability, because you really started with a scoping and process. So process traceability is extremely important as a business process expert. And so here, as an example, I have my scope. So, okay, so I have two processes, and then the processes have requirements. And as you can see, as part of this exercise, Wulff prepared a test case and executed a test case. So things are fine, but things may not be fine always. And that's the advantage of such reports. As a business expert, then you just have one view in which you see, okay, first of all, is it detailed enough? Because maybe you remember, I remember BKP. I even told my consultant to document some requirements. Maybe he never did it, right? So this is how you will find those patterns easily. Also, maybe you said, okay, but this is already in production. Why it is showing in realization? So you can go click here and set the right status of the process. This is an advantage of having such reports. So actually, let's do it. In this case, maybe the process really was in production. So I'll go ahead. So from status realization, I'll switch it to production. Then once I come back, I see the status change, right? And here also you can see that the requirement is in realization, whereas I expected it to be done. So say I am 100% certain it was done, it was delivered, I have tested it myself, it has even been deployed to production. So you say, okay, then maybe you set the status to deployed because it's done from your perspective. Then once you come back, right, it shows the correct status. Then there is another report which is called requirement traceability. So I'll use the browser back button to go to the list of multiple reports, and one of them is the requirement traceability. So as you will recall, from a requirement, we created a user story. Now from one requirement, you could have created multiple user stories and multiple project tasks, and then each one of them could have progressed differently. And as a business process expert, when is the right time to test it? When are you ready for user acceptance testing, right? With that question in mind, we have created this report. So we give you a very, very simple view in which we say, this is your requirement. This is the status of that requirement. It has one user story. And you say, okay, yeah, things are fine. Okay. But in one eye span, you can quickly see the parent, the status of the parent, the children, and even the status of the children. You can even download it, right? So it has a lot of advantages. You can have subsequent navigation for whatever reason. Maybe you want to just enter a comment to your story. So you can go from this. And so let's maybe you want to compliment the developer that, the friendly policy actually helped you get more sales. So you really want to say, okay, why not do some appreciation? Okay. And actually that finishes exercise 8. And now we are very close to the end of the time, but we are on track because we have just one exercise left. That is exercise 9, which basically tells you to hide your project. Okay, so let's go to the project screen. And actually this is a very simple, so it won't take more than a second. You are just supposed to click on this and it will hide your project. Okay, so what is the advantage of hiding a project? Okay, so as part of this session, yes, it will keep the system clean for the subsequent people who come and log on to the session, but that's not why it is designed for. Maybe you are working in a project and you have some test data. So let's say you are curious to see what's in the S/4HANA Private Cloud Edition roadmap, but you are not sure, and you don't want your users to get confused that there are so many projects in the system. So you create projects temporarily for a purpose, and then you hide them if you don't want to delete them, right? So this is temporary. That means I can go ahead and I can hide something. So let's do it. And it tells you that the project is still there. The project is not deleted, lost. It's not even deactivated. It's just hidden from your view for a specific purpose, which you may have, and you can always bring it back. Okay, so once I hide the project, then what happens is it just goes to the hidden list. And that's all that concludes your exercise. Okay. So we wanted to leave some room for question and answers, but before I go there are some very simple things that I wanted to share for completion. So this is an unlimited session. So this session will be available to you even after this. So that means your journey doesn't stop here. You still have time at your own pace to finish the exercise, and this recording will also be shared with you easily. As part of the exercise material, we have also included certain links. So the links are mentioned here, so you can request your own tenant. You have the public demo system. We have a fantastic expert portal. Many of us are also writing a lot of blog posts, which we have tried to link here. And we also have an ebook, so that's going to be coming soon. So this is something that will be available early Q1 next year, and yeah, we are very excited. So 20th January is the plan date, and that's also something that we are very passionate about. Okay, with this, back to you, Wulff, or the chat moderators.
Well, maybe we have questions for us that could not be answered in the chat. So maybe Sinye, Eva, Bhagwati, if you found any important questions you wanted to bring here to stage, please let us know.
Yeah, Wulff, maybe a good question that just came into the chat. What is really the advantage of Cloud ALM compared to maybe other project tools like Jira or MS Project? And I already answered this in the chat, but maybe from your perspective, like what are the things, the key takeaways? What is the big advantages of Cloud ALM compared to these specific tools?
Jack, you want to give it a start?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, a great question. So there are tools, and there are many tools, and there is a network of tools. So that is also one of the main problems. So sometimes the truth gets distributed into so many tools that nobody has a sense of control. So SAP Cloud ALM tries to bring everything together. That's one advantage, but I'll say the huge advantage is preloaded content. Preloaded content that is always up to date. Okay, so you as a customer or a partner don't need to struggle for what are the latest activate instructions. I need to see what is the latest business process content, what changed in 2111 versus 2108. So all that thinking is already done for you because the tool is connected to the backbone and we present you the latest content whenever you log on. And then it's not just one aspect such as project management, but it's the whole life cycle. So how do you really, from a project to testing, to beyond project, to operations, how do you get everything together? That is the value proposition from Cloud ALM. Yeah. Anything you want to add, Wulff?
Yes, so I believe I can only agree to everything you said. There's one aspect which I've always found very important, and this is we are really close to the executing business applications. And with Cloud ALM, we are not just talking about the business applications we are doing, the application lifecycle management for. We are all also really integrating with them. We are following them, and that tight relationship to the landscapes, I find that always so important, because I can upgrade process content. That's fantastic, but I should do it when the actual business system tenant was upgraded. That needs to work together. So we need to be aware what happens in the system landscapes, and then we can react on that. And this is really about reflecting the system's realities. And this is what makes, for me, Cloud ALM very, very special, because this is where we always look after, where we have a focus, where we, the features, the transport management you demoed, you can right away look into the systems and you see, is the transport through or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a visibility that we have, and it's not just about talking about the systems.
And just one detail to add is the ecosystem of products within SAP. So Cloud ALM, on a roadmap perspective, and even today, so we are not just a standalone tool, but we have very good integration with some of the tools such as SAP Central Business Configuration. So as a customer, if you really want to keep things together and contained, you don't have to worry that, yes, I have to understand 10 tools. So the integration is supposed to work that when you connect SAP Cloud ALM to SAP Central Business Configuration, then project activities will flow into Cloud ALM, and you will be able to see their status, the latest status within Cloud ALM. And this is just the beginning, and we will enhance these integrations in future. Similarly, the discussion plan for SAP for Me integration. So a lot of exciting stuff is planned, in which basically this becomes your environment in which you manage your end-to-end implementation and even beyond implementation. And the whole tool set then is connected to SAP Cloud ALM to give you easy navigation. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah, there are some specific questions still in the chat. There's one maybe for Wulff. How can solution documentation structures be migrated, saving our invest in modeling processes there? Maybe you can give it a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's referring to the solution documentation that is available in Solution Manager today. And I have to say, Solution Manager is a really strong tool, and it has fantastic capabilities, and it has a functional depth that is in the market unreached from my perspective. So from that angle, I have to admit that Solution Manager is so strong that I can hardly imagine how I can migrate all the content in process management today into SAP Cloud ALM. So I think that that's not possible today. We are working on making or to create a possibility to move over content from Solution Manager into Cloud ALM, but we have to see how quick we can deliver something like that. So we keep in mind that there is a lot of valuable content available in Solution Manager, and that we need to find a way to also leverage that content in SAP Cloud ALM. But today, I just can tell you that it will be hard to get everything over. So I think it's not possible today. So, and I believe, by the way, that your investments are safe in Solution Manager. It's not like that. So Cloud ALM is playing exactly the same arena like Solution Manager. We are still yeah, it's like Canada and USA. Yeah, we are all brothers, huh?
Yeah, brothers from another mother, right? That's
Brothers from
Polish
another
line.
mother, right?
Yeah, and I think this is a question that came up more often, probably also because we have a lot of solution manager users or experts here in the call. What is the role cloud ALM versus solution manager? So maybe also from my part, and I answered some of this already. So we are really focusing on cloud-centric customers that want to rather stay with standard functionality, standard processes, lightweight solution. Solution manager is still a very important tool, especially for customers that are more on-prem, that already invested in solution manager and that have more needs in terms of customization, configuration. And I think that's in short, maybe summarizing the two tools and why they do exist. And I also shared some links to recordings from ALM Summit, where we just had 2 weeks ago very detailed sessions on a lot of different topics. So maybe I will add the chat, because all of these sessions are now available on YouTube and are also linked to our central support page. So maybe I just put this in the chat. I also put in the chat the Cloud ALM email. So here, feel free to share any thoughts, requirements, ideas with us after the session. We will forward to the right colleagues so you can still collaborate with us. There's also the ALM community, which we try to answer questions that come up there. So people can even see the answers, not just via email, but kind of globally. And again, stay tuned for a lot of blogs and news coming from these colleagues or the book that Jag just mentioned.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Having said that, we reached the end of the session, right? That was fast.
Yeah, time passes quickly, and also I think one thing is the co-innovation culture that I want to emphasize. So please do not think it's a one-way communication. It's really a two-way communication. You decide the shape of the product by giving inputs, by influencing us, by talking to us, by giving us feedback, and we are really happy to work on that. So also some of the concrete developments we have done in recent past have come from direct customer inputs. So really use the tool, spend time with the tool, and reach out to us if you think you are working in a different way.
One remark more regarding the session script. So the session script reflects the capability that are in Cloud ALM today. So everything works, yes. But we are continuously delivering and developing new functions and features. So don't expect the script to work the same way in 3 months from now. Certainly the tool has changed and will have new functions, new capabilities, and will really evolve fast. So we are really cloud native.
Yeah. But we'll ensure whatever you are doing now will still continue to work disruption free. So we have an upward compatible way. So we try our best so to make sure you don't face any disruptions, but we really bring many enhancements to you. So it's an exciting time, honestly. This is really fantastic. And also looking at the response from the audience, how you are following up with, following along the session, so many projects in the system. So I think, yeah, you all did a fantastic job.
And then thank you, Wulff and Jag, for a great session and all the preparation that leading to this great exercise. It's always a good guidance for everybody to understand the tool. And again, content is still available. And feel free, I'm looking through the chat, try to answer some of the emails, the questions, but I might be that the chat will be closed. So again, take your questions with you, send us an email, share it in the community, and we will follow up no matter when or if we can still reach the chat here.
Thanks. Bye-bye.